What is the appeal of a traditional knife? A slip joint or traditional walking knife? What's the appeal of these knives? I mean, they've been around a long time, over 100 years. There's many knife companies that are around now, and some have closed, that have just been the main part of our of U.S. knife making. But a lot of people consider them old-fashioned. Maybe they consider them something your grandpa might use, or your father, and maybe you wouldn't consider a slip joint knife. It's not something that's tactical enough for you. I'm definitely one that loves a good locking tradition or a modern folding knife. Clips to your pocket, easy deployment, locking blade, like this Strider SMF, definitely. But there's a part of me that definitely appreciates a slip joint knife. I think they can definitely live in harmony together in your knife collection, and I would challenge you to consider the traditional knives. There's a lot of options out there. You can go with the American companies like Case, which these two models here, the Stockman or a Swayback Jack. You can go with GEC, which is a newer knife company that is probably one of my favorites to this date. I think they make the best slip joints on the market today, in my opinion. At least one of the companies that does. Here's this is actually a Queen-made knife. It's Vintage Knives Moose in ebony, but was contracted by a Queen and actually the Shot and Morgan crew. Bill Howard, before he left to GEC, oversaw this knife being made, and it's just an awesome example of a traditional slip joint. What is it though? Why consider one of these knives? I mean, I can't open it with one hand. I can't flick it out. It's not usually the biggest. You're not going to have the biggest blades, although there's some large traditional knives that definitely will compete with any modern knife. But you're usually not having a locking blade. There are some that have them, but the slip joints definitely don't. Why would I choose this? Why would I want to go this route? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and for me, there's something to the history behind these knives. They've been around so long, and the fact that a lot of people have relatives or friends, a family that are older than us that mentored us growing up. Maybe it was a grandpa, maybe it was your father or uncle or what, or maybe it was just someone who a friend of the family, but or maybe it was someone that got you involved in knives. Maybe a slip joint knife was one of your first knives, and you still have it in your drawer. Maybe you've kind of gone away from it, but I'd challenge you to get them out and appreciate them if you have some. If not, maybe even invest a little bit of money into some, because there's something to them. Like I said, the draw of the history behind it. I went to a garage sale and found some old magazines. I have an appreciation for art and design, and I just love these older magazines. These are from 1968, Outdoor Life, and just the illustrations on here of they're idealized. Obviously, guys going out hunting and fishing, and these are the type of guys that carried one of these knives. They had their trusty case or their buck knife in their hand, in their pocket, or on their side in a sheath. And they were using them. It wasn't about collecting knives back then. It was about using them. That's why when you go it's so hard to find old knives that are in good condition, that haven't been touched, because people didn't collect them back then. That wasn't their purpose. They were made to be used. That was, that's what they were for, and that's what they are for. And some of us do collect and use, which is fine, and some of us just collect, and that's fine too. But I would probably. Everyone has knives that they use, They may not use all their knives. They may have some that they just consider the ones they want to throw in their pocket. Here's one of my favorites that I like. I like the carbon steel blades on these. There's something about the steel choice of traditional knives. A lot of times the older knives have 1095 steel, which is gonna patina and age and give you that character that you can't get on modern day steels. And it never goes out of state. You see out of style. You'll still see modern knife companies producing blades with carbon steel. Why? Because it's tested and true, and it holds an edge well, and it takes abuse without chipping and breaking, and these are great knives. These are well-made knives. Now they're not all well made. You'll find some junk out there. This is a Case Classic, which is actually not even made by Case. This was produced by Bluegrass Cutlery, which actually contracted Queen to make it, and then they did some final touches on it. So you'll it gets confusing at times. Different knife companies will make different knives for contract with each other. So there's a lot of history behind these companies and what it's about. This is a swayback jack, Warncliffe blade. This was a Tony Bowes design. This is one that Tony Bowes is probably the granddaddy of custom knife making, and he's collaborated with Case with some higher end knives, which I'll show you later on. But he's also made one of the production knives. This one runs around $50. It's not cheap. And I will tell you that Case knives, I have opinion on the different knife companies, and I'll give you that opinion in a later video. But this is one they really did well. The fit and finish is outstanding. There's no gaps in the back spring here. The blades are centered. No wobble in the blades. That's one thing with slip joints. When you have pinned construction, there's a pin that goes in here that if you don't have it just right, you get some wobbling, and there's no way to adjust it like you can with a traditional knife that has a screw that you can tighten. So, doesn't mean it doesn't cut, no, but it just, to knife guys, to some people like me, I get a little bothered when I have too much blade wobble, like I know a lot of you do. This is probably one of my favorite designs, my patterns from Case. Swayback jack. Stockman with rounded bolsters. This is one that Case made that they have a worn look, the pocket worn look. This is another example of how I think old nostalgia kind of appeals to people. They made a new knife that looks old. When you put a knife like this in your pocket, over time the little jigging, what they do is this is a dyed bone from the shin bone of a cow, and it's been jigged in a machine that gives you the little valleys and peaks, which Case does an outstanding job, in my opinion, of doing that. And over time, when you have it in your pocket, those little peaks wear down, and you get something that looks like this. Now, they speed up the process, and they do it themselves somehow to age it, and they sell it as pocket worn. And so, kind of a neat thing that Case did with this series. Different shapes. This is a handful of a knife. This is the Moose with a long pull. You see that they call this the pull. Nail nick sometime. This would be a nail nick where you take your fingernail to open these knives. This is a spear blade and also comes with a clip. This is a Vintage Knives produced this. Is a knife company actually contracted with Queen, and actually it had their Shot and Morgan. Shot and Morgan is owned by Queen, and had their crew, which Shot and Morgan is kind of like a little bit higher fit and finish than Queen made knives. Kind of their I don't know, how would you, maybe their Lexus compared to Toyota. And so they this is done in ebony, and they do a lot of, like, they'll pinch bolsters like you'll see here. You'll get the pinch bolsters on the end, or the fluted, the rat tailing lines across the bolsters. These are all little extras that are done. This one has nickel silver liners instead of brass. You can see the brass on this. Okay, just a little extra touches here and there. They did a great job. Bill Howard, who is one of the owners over at GEC, Great Eastern Cutlery, he used to work at Queen and oversaw the making of this knife and just did an outstanding job. Speaking of GEC, here's one that is a cigar, also a moose. I think they have a specific name. I don't remember it. Talk more about Great Eastern Cutlery at a later date, but it's probably the #1 knife company on my list right now as far as quality. Look at the stag on this. This is deer antler. The best stag comes from India, and sandbar stag, and it's hard to get because the country has put an embargo on the stag antlers. They fall off, and they're collected, but they're not letting a lot of that out of the country. So for a while, it's really hard to get good quality stag, and different companies have come across it one way or the other and produced it. Well, this is one company that has got a hold of some nice looking stag. As you can see, the nooks and crannies, they call that popcorn. Popcorn stag is just beautiful character. Every knife is different. You got, they're not all looking the same. No other knife looks exactly like this. There's something to that. So what is it? Traditional? Why is it? Why do people like it? I think older people, as you get older, you have more appreciation for it. And turning, I'm 40 now, I'm turning 41 soon, and I think there's something too. I definitely have the appreciation for this and love it, and will still buy this type of knife. But there's something about these knives that is appealing. Just like I look at these magazines, there's something about these magazines that are appealing. The artwork is appealing. It's kind of a retro thing. It's kind of it takes about 20 or 30 years and things start coming back in style. You'll see, the old Michael Jordan shoes. When I was a kid, Michael Jordan was, on the NBA, scene and playing for the Bulls, and had a contract with Nike. He had his Air Jordans, and the first Air Jordan model. Everybody wanted those shoes. Everyone, And at those days, $100 for shoes, that was crazy. But people were buying them, and they loved them. And my parents didn't let me buy them, but that's okay. I had the Pumas, the Ralph Sampson Pumas, and not quite the same effect, but you know what? They're shoes, and they did the job. But you know what? It just shows you right now, you look on the market, the original Michael Jordan, version 1s are back on sale. You can buy those, right? Why do people want them? It's that appeal, that old retro appeal. There's something to it that draws people to wearing the same, clothes back then. You see clothes in the 80s coming back in style. It's just there's something to that of the past, the desire of the past, and the draw of that. So anyway, I'd encourage you to, there's a lot of different companies out there. You can get Slipjoints if you don't mind buying overseas, and if you don't necessarily have to have American made, you can get some quality slip joints for $10, $15, and I mean some of the quality is better than these case knives in a lot of areas. Not to bash Case, because Case does an outstanding job in a lot of their areas, but the consistency isn't always there. And there's some quality knives being made out there. It's not like it used to be. So you could get quite a collection for cheap, or just try one just to use. And the reason I think you might want to use one is that it just teams up really well with a more modern knife. Maybe it's not this one, maybe it's a Benchmade or a Spyderco. Something like this isn't going to intimidate people. Okay, it's something that is going to be people friendly, and when you have to do those cutting needs, you're not going to want to scare people away. Definitely worth a look, and I encourage you to take some time and check out some traditional slip joints. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Take care.